All right, why safety? How we use measurement to advance the governance of technology. So we are Internet Safety Labs, as you have just learned. And so the question, of course, is, okay, who are we, right? We're the world's first independent product safety testing lab for software. We're 501c3, which makes us hopefully about as independent as we can get and still get paid. We've been around since 2019. We're a small org. We want to build a safety culture in the tech industry and in the world, but in software, software focused. Who am I? I'm Irene Knapp. I'm the technology director. Before that, 5 years, Google advertising privacy. So I have a lot of thoughts on accountability from within the system versus accountability from outside the system, right? And I'm an activist on a lot of topics, including gender stuff. I was part of the 2018 Google walkout, for those who remember that. So, I think I have perspective, which may be enough to carry this very philosophical topic of safety. Why safety when this is a privacy conference, right? So why safety indeed? Well, why privacy, right? These are political terms. Everybody is always pushing and pulling at the meaning of words, especially words for large human activities. It's not a static thing. You might think privacy is a greenfield thing. We're the people in this room who make it up. It can be whatever we want it to be. That's true up to a point. But I think the framing itself and also the incentive structure that it flows from is relevant here. And I will get into that. But, as you've just heard from Lisa's talk, most of the work we do, there's a lot of overlap with privacy. It's the same work. We have the same mission of making computing better for people. We speak up about the same things. How heard we are may differ a little bit. But I will get to the cases where privacy and safety don't totally overlap, where one is not quite the same as the other, but I don't think scope is the most interesting question. I think the most interesting question is, what does, almost back out to a literary analysis framework for a moment here and be okay, what does privacy say to the public when you say it? Privacy is something new and exciting. It's part of building a better world. It's the banner of the future, right? It's something also the public doesn't fully understand. They don't know what it's going to be, which means perhaps we get to define it together. I enjoy doing that. I've enjoyed doing that. I still enjoy that. Safety is an old boring thing that people maybe stop listening, but every child's toy, you can't give a child a stuffed bear without somebody having tested, hey, it's flame-proof, right? That need is clearly understood in everything that isn't a computer. So the basic shape of safety is set. We don't get to redefine that as we go in the same way. If I started talking about flying to the moon as if this is part of safety, it's clearly not part of safety. Everybody knows that. Okay, but there's still a ton of work to figure out what safety means in the context of computing. And that is open work. I'm not coming to you claiming to have those answers. I'm hoping to have the questions that will get us there, right? So, if they're political terms, as I say they are, who are they for? If you're a large corporation, privacy serves the company's interests in the end. Because it ties into those narratives. It's transformative. It's going to take the world we have. And I realize this, by the way, I meant to lead with this. I realize this is perhaps a challenging thing to say in this room, and I promise I say it as a privacy person. I'm not saying don't do privacy. I think we need to challenge ourselves and think forward, right? So privacy serves the company's interests because it ties into the company's narrative, right? Every large tech company wants to be the future. It wants to be the shiny thing everybody wants. Every small tech company wants to be a large tech company. If you're an independent consultant at a privacy firm, but still in the for-profit space, I encourage that. I think it's good. to like have small organizations that hold the large ones accountable, but you're not as independent as you think because your clients are the people you're trying to hold accountable, right? If you raise a concern about something that could harm the public, if you raise it really seriously and tell them you can't do this, they're not going to hire you again. They're going to hire somebody else. So you can be financially independent from any particular company, which is good. It gives you some freedom to choose your clients, the people who want to hear your message. But you aren't independent from that incentive structure, and it changes your thinking. I always, even when I was at Google, I used to say, like, there's a tendency to take management dictates as if they're laws of nature. You stop asking yourself, how can humanity make this better? And you start asking yourself, how can this company make this better within the constraint that it has to be profitable? And that assumption gets so deep into you, you stop even seeing it. Who are they for? I would like to believe, right, safety is understood to be adversarial. You're holding somebody accountable. If any industry that has a safety story, and every industry does, and that's the thing too, we should be looking outside ourselves to learn a bit, right? Any industry that has had some history of learning about safety, executives were very hostile to it from the get-go. They knew where it was going to lead. It was going to lead to more expenses, right? And their job is to minimize expenses. They would not be doing their job if they welcomed this form of accountability, if they welcomed it all the way. Like, you'll get small improvements. You'll get like, oh, we're not going to launch that yet. We'll launch it in 2 weeks when the protection is built. Or you'll get protections that work for like 99% of your users. The problem is, if you're one of the giant corporations, 1% of your users is 1 million people every day. And also, it's not even enough to make the right decision behind closed doors. It's still the wrong decision because the public is a stakeholder. So we need to be independent. We need to be prepared for a fight. We don't want it to be a fight forever. The goal is to get to a world where this is part of the status quo, where if you're doing something, you have to get it looked at from a safety perspective. But yeah, I left something on the slide at the bottom here, which I've already kind of spoken to from a different angle. I don't believe that self-regulation works. I understand the desire for it because it allows rapid innovation, et cetera. But there's no way for anybody outside the company to know, did you do a good job or not? And I know that you didn't win every battle. You didn't fix everything. Okay. So safety is the more honest framing. If you're someone like me who does seek radical change, I think you should not be afraid to be a little confrontational about it, right? If you say privacy, again, you're adopting the corporate, we're the wave of the future mindset. And I care about the future. I want the future. I want it to be safe. I don't want people to get killed or hurt. And computers do both of those things these days. And it communicates to our actual stakeholders, who are the public and the representatives of the public, regulatory bodies, charitable foundations who support our work. It communicates how things will fit together once we're a much larger organization that can do all these things we dream about, right? And once hopefully there are more organizations doing the same stuff. I don't see this as a contest. So now, looping back to scope, right? What is privacy? What is safety? There is a lot of overlap. Safety is broader. And Lisa and I go back and forth about this, just to acknowledge that. I'm representing my view here. Safety is broader, but privacy is certainly like everything in safety. But there are things like misinformation, right? It's a harm. Probably people in this room have advocated for it, within their organizations to stop allowing our platform to be used to spread misinformation, right? We have to do something. But I bet you didn't get very far with that advocacy because doing something properly about it is expensive. And so, executives who control the company's actual decisions on headcount and so on, that's how they make their views heard. They don't want to come down in favor of misinformation, but they don't want to come down in favor of 500 headcount dedicated to it either, right? And so the meaning of the word privacy gets tugged at a little bit. It gets defined over time, iteratively in these ways that scope it a little bit more, a little bit less. Safety is broader framing, and we clearly include misinformation. We include anything that can hurt people, right? And I will hold that line, and we'll have to. So what is safety? Product safety is technology governance. The process of figuring out what safety means, it's an organic one. Not everything is defined yet, and it will never be fully defined because there keeps being new technology, right? So we have to have an exploratory process. You heard a lot about our methodology in the last talk. We just kind of dig into the data and really immerse ourselves in it and get to know it, smell the dandelions, right? And you feel the shape of it, and then you try to build these rubrics and taxonomies that can formalize that knowledge so that we can scale it up and have testers come by and apply our methodology that we've been coming up with as we go and apply it at scale to over 1,000 apps, right? And hopefully many more, because there are a lot more apps than that in the world. We see it as our job to identify stuff and build out process around it. It's also our job to run the process, to keep doing the boring parts. We're not here today to announce a fancy new product that has solved safety, right? I will show you a cool thing that I'm proud that we built, but we are under no illusion that this is a static thing. We have to keep doing the stuff after we launch, right? We have to keep testing all the new apps that come out. So now to show you the cool thing we built, but very quickly because it's not my primary focus. My primary focus is the philosophy that I hope, think about it. You don't have to agree, you just have to think about it and come back if you disagree and tell me how. I'd love to hear all about that. So our safety labels, right? You heard about the data collection, but we also present that data in addition to published reports, because we're a nonprofit and that's what we do. We also have a website. You can see it. It's up at microscope.org. This is just, I'm not going to go over every piece of this data because that's not my goal today to focus on. But we took that data and we said, what are the interesting, actionable parts to somebody who's making a decision about what technology to use? Perhaps they're like the tech expert for a school district or something. And so we have this nutrition label format. It's modular, right? Because we expect to expand this continuously over the years as we discover new things that should be measured and explained to the public. Or the original food nutrition labels were modular for that exact same reason, right? We have a lot of stuff on this label. Again, you can go to it. I'm not going to zoom in for you here, but if you're interested, it is all there. Some of this at the bottom especially, we went through a lot of trouble over every single field here. We have a whole, we had to figure out how do you format mobile permission names, and Android and iOS are two totally separate problems. We had to, score SDKs. We had to have a rubric for that. We had to have a rubric for how do you score companies and domains and all these things. They all kind of feed into each other, and the label is just a bubbling up at the top level of all that kind of information structure. So how do you decide what to put on something like this? Well, what's useful? What can we do at scale? And how do you quantify it? Three big questions that we keep asking ourselves and keep revisiting. So what's useful? How do we decide that? Okay, I said we claim to represent the public. If I say we're not doing things behind closed doors, our doors have to be open. So we have open standards panels where members of the public can come talk to us. We also talk to the communities we serve. We haven't spoken to 600 schools that we've sampled, but we have spoken to schools. You know, we try hard to reach out to the affected communities and to the people who think about like the well-being of that. And education has been our focus because, again, we're trying to kind of envision the world we want to see and skate to where the puck will be, not where it was, right? And so we're building out kind of our fully vertical thing here with education as the test bed, but healthcare is another area, right? Like areas of society where the most oppressive technologies tend to get deployed, which is the people who have the least power to fight back against it. You know, someday when we have millions and millions. Okay, so what can we do at scale? When we're in new topics, again, it's an organic process. We have to explore, and so that hands-on attention is essential. That will always be human testing the new stuff, right? It has to be, because our job is to go where there isn't a trail and to make a trail for other people to follow. And then, you know, we immerse in the data. We do that exploratory process. Once you've got a rubric, now you can calibrate people on that rubric. You can have people like do 10 things against that rubric and see if their scores match up to other people. If not, you know, adjust. And once people are calibrated, they can just apply it, and you can measure. It just becomes a problem of having enough people and enough time, which is much simpler than having enough creative energy to do 10,000 or a million apps yourself. You can't. You need to scale it. So the more clearly we define it, the easier it is to move towards automated testing. Again, that will never be everything, but it will allow broader coverage of the areas that we understand well. How do you quantify? Every piece of data needs its own solution. Here's just one example, right? This is a zoom in on a part of that label. One thing we can do, we can compare an app to other apps in its category. I say in its category, there's a lot of hidden complexity there. We had to taxonomize apps, again, just in the area of ed tech and things that are used by children, even if they're not ed tech per se. Because the App Store categories don't work for us, they're designed around business needs. They're not designed around what's a comparable task. So in summary, why safety? Because it's about being responsible. The risks of software harm are measurable and quantifiable, and we should measure and quantify them. Thank you.